Hi, Siddique. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Thank you for having me, and I'm glad to be here. Um, and I look forward to our conversation. Appreciate it.
So, I want to start off way in the beginning of sort of your life specifically. I know you are a musician, but what are your earliest memories of music in your environment, in your home growing up in Afghanistan?
I'm glad you asked because this is something that I grew up with. Basically, when people ask me how long have you been doing music, my answer is usually for as long as I can remember. Maybe even before that, but I don't remember. you know. So music was always in the household. My dad played a little bit. Nothing serious, but there were instruments at home like a harmonium, a mandolin, um, and everybody listened to music a lot. So there was always music playing, whether it was on the radio or cassettes were the thing back then. So when I was super young, and that's how it started. And then we lived in Pakistan for a bunch of years, um, and I was going to school there, and my interest in music just continued to be there, and then that's where I kind of was able to take some classes and learn um, an instrument and kind of take more serious classes. But I was still kind of young and learning and kind of exploring things. And I was being exposed to different types of music. My start was like the first serious music lessons I got was on the violin. And it was all the credit goes to one of my uncles who just basically like one day was like, "Do you like violin?" I said I knew what it was like, but I had never seen the instrument in person. So and then the next day he shows up with a violin. He's like, "I talked to a teacher and I brought you a violin, so you're gonna learn. But his condition is that he will meet you in person and he will ask you a couple questions, maybe give you a lesson, and then he will decide whether you can learn because it's a very difficult instrument and so on." So that's how it started. And then he brought the teacher home and he showed me a few things, and I kind of parroted him like they did the exact same thing. And he was like, "Okay, I think he can learn." So then I took more lessons, and it went on from there. And then later on, I was uh, more interested to learn Western music as well because my violin teacher was Indian classical style, so very different. And as you know, that's kind of all basis of a lot of our music as well. Almost Afghan musicians learn and play the Indian or the North Indian classical style, but our own version of it, obviously, and that's kind of the basis of the music. But I was interested in learning Western music, so then I found this other teacher in Pakistan who was in the subcontinent. There's a term Anglo. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but what it means is like the British people who didn't leave uh, India or Pakistan after the partition. Uh, some of them just liked it there and stayed. Some of them got married and had families, so they stayed. So they're called Anglo. They're English or British generally, but they are Indian or Pakistani. So there's a lot of them. So I found this ustad and I learned from him, and he was like he studied in London College of Music. He's like a very classically trained musician, and then he played jazz and other stuff as well. So then I took personal lessons, like in-person lessons from him. I would go to his house and take lessons a couple of days a week, and for a bunch of years. So that's where I learned Western music as well, and like, and then yeah, and it just continued like that. And then I went back to Kabul around, I think it was around 2003 or four. Um, and then by that time, I was already playing, playing music and also like learn a little bit about music production and like work in some studios. So then in Kabul, with some friends, I started like building a small studio where we did recordings and production for other people, and that's where the band was formed too later. so,
Mhm.
so that's how it started basically.
So, you play a variety of instruments. I know you play the piano, violin. I see the rabab behind you. But what
Yes.
drew you to bass guitar specifically?
Well, it was sort of an accident, if you will, because it has to do with the story of how we started the band, right? So we got introduced to Suleiman, who's our lead vocalist and also guitar player in the band, and he had just moved back from Tashkent because he lived there with his family, and I had moved back recently from Pakistan, as I mentioned, and we were in the studio just uh, doing a lot of production for other people, and sometimes just practicing for some shows and stuff like that. And uh, so we got introduced to Suleiman through a mutual friend, and he came with his guitar, and we kind of liked what he was doing, and he played us some of his songs that he was doing. Um, we kind of got along very well. So he would always show up and kind of hang out with us and play music and stuff. And so one of the days I came back and Suleiman was like playing one of his songs with our drummer. At that time we had a different drummer, Mustafa. So and they were just jamming on something, and I asked what's happening, and they told me, well, this is one of Suleiman's songs, and we were just working it out, you know. Um, Maybe potentially at some point we'll record it for him. So they're going over that, and there was a bass guitar there in the studio, and it was one of our friends. And Suleiman was like, "Why don't you just grab the bass and play with us?" And I said, "Well, I don't play bass. You know, like what are you talking about?" He's like, "No, it's just very easy. You play a bunch of instruments, like you'll get it. I'll show you the chords. It's like pretty easy." So he showed me, and I mean, I had played guitar a little bit, but never like played bass. So it wasn't like an instrument that I had any experience with, and so I spent like maybe 20, 30 minutes to figure out the bass line for that song with Suleiman. He showed me everything and the chords, and then we started playing, and it kind of like worked. After like an hour or so, we had the song, and it sounded really good, and it just kind of clicked to all of us, like, why don't we do this? You know, like this sounds really good, and it's interesting and it's different. And Suleiman already has the songs, and I was like, "Do you have other songs?" He's like, "Yeah, I have a bunch of songs, and I can write more." So like, that's how it kind of started. And then I realized, like, okay, if I have to do this, then I have to learn bass, like, to like find material and kind of practice at home. Because these other two people, they are experts on their instruments. That's the instruments they've played all their life. You know, I'm the odd one here because like I don't play bass, and now all of a sudden I'm supposed to play bass. And I realized that for this combination, if we need this to work, we need a bass player, and I have to learn it. So that's how it started. And then I would practice individually at home, and I found a bass guitar. I borrowed my friend's bass guitar for at first, and then later found one, which in those days in Kabul it wasn't easy to find instruments either. So it was just starting to get there in the market and stuff. And but yeah, it started like that basically, and that's how I started playing the bass. And obviously, I love playing it. I enjoy it. It's very different experience than playing rebop, for example. I love playing rebop too, but it's a very different um, kind of if it's a very different feeling when you play those two instruments. Um, it's more like obviously in the band, the music is like all about the energy and kind of playing together and playing in sync um, and then with the Rob, it's more like more traditional stuff, you know, more kind of exploring our traditional music from different regions of the country and how different they are and how each has its own unique kind of quality and it's like a more detailed kind of more spiritual side of it versus the more energy and the fun part, if you will. So yeah, I enjoyed playing all the different instruments, and but yeah, that's how I started bass.
Siddiq, I would imagine it's really difficult to be the first to do something just because there's no roadmap on how to do it. Being able to form a rock band in Afghanistan without any sort of guidance on how to do it, quote unquote, correctly, or how to strategically come out with the right song or how it would look. I would imagine that's really difficult. When you guys first started, when you guys first decided, okay, let's do it, we're together, did you know the what you were doing, the impact, the influence that you will have, or was it very organic?
Yeah, I think it was very organic, if I'm being honest, because at the time we didn't really know if and things kind of happened by itself for us in that way. And yes, it wasn't easy, obviously, like to begin with. Um, for any band, you need a space to practice, and it can be very hard to get that space. We were fortunate because we had that space in the beginning, and we were in that studio where we were doing recordings for other people. Um, we didn't own the studio or all the equipment in it, but we had like other partners who were part of that, and they let us use the space. So that was really lucky for us, right? Then comes like finding the instruments, and it's a very kind of expensive endeavor, if you will, right? Because you need a bass guitar, you need a bass amp, you need a guitar, you need an amp, you need a good quality drummer. We were lucky because Mustafa already was a drummer and a music producer working in that studio, and he had a drum set that was very decent. Um, and so that was all set up already, right? And then now I had to find a bass amp. I borrowed somebody's bass amp, and he was not happy that I was using it for band practice. So you have to deal with those kind of things, right? So there's those like kind of material challenges of the things, right, that we had to deal with. And then obviously Kabul's electricity is a different nightmare that I can talk about for hours. Nothing works, and then it's not never there, and it goes off. So we had to find ways and even like use a generator to like practice, and that didn't give enough power for everything, so then it was fluctuating, and then you have like a fused amp or something, then you have to find a person to fix that. So those kind of challenges were all there. But for us, it was we enjoyed doing it, and as I said, in that first time when we played together, it just felt good, and it sounded good to us, and we thought like, okay, we can put something together with this because we have the things that we need. I was kind of the weaker part of the triangle, if you will, because bass was a new instrument for me, and I was like, I will figure that out as we go. I will practice at home. I'll go home at night and practice for hours and figure out like, if you see the first videos of our performances or videos, I'm playing and I'm looking at my hand because I have to look. I'm very new to the instrument, right? So I'm not comfortable to play without looking, right? So those were the kind of the challenges. And then we honestly we never thought of anything else at the time. Like, will people like this? Will people not like this? You know, how will people take it? Will we have our own audience? Because at that time, everything was very new. We were just starting to put something together. We were figuring out our sound. We were figuring out. I was figuring out the instrument, right? So it was like, um, and then we were like, okay, maybe at some point we'll be ready to record a song, right? So we're kind of trying to get to that level where we're ready to record a song. And then that's when we got like an invitation to play at a festival in India. It was the South Asian countries festival, and it was one of our contacts that we had reached out, and they were like, we were looking for a band to come and perform in the festival, and it will be it's a festival, so you're gonna have like a very short, like 30-minute set. Um, but we're like, okay, we have this three-piece that we're working on, and Suleiman had like I'm forgetting the name of that website, MySpace. I don't know if you heard about it or remember it. It was the social media of our time, basically. So So we shared that because we didn't have a lot of material to share, and he
Mhm.
had some individual recordings of his songs previously, so kind of we shared that. And they were like, okay, yeah, we will have you guys. So we went and played there, and we had to like now we had to prepare a set for 30 minutes, and our set was becoming like 25 minutes, and we're like, we need 5 more minutes, and even usually you prepare 35, 40 minutes for a 30 minute because you never know, like they might let you play more, and then so we're kind of figuring all of that out, and within months of the band getting together, we were getting ready to play a festival, which was kind of crazy. And that's how what triggered us even more to work more, to practice more together, to experiment together, to even write songs and stuff together. And um, but yeah, so then we started like doing some recordings, and it was very hard, and because there was not enough equipment in the studio for recording a full band, there weren't other studios in Kabul, so we had to like do everything ourselves and borrow stuff, and yeah. But that was in terms of other challenges, as I mentioned, like of like thinking of like what the audience will look like for us, or whether people will accept our music or not. We didn't even we thought about it, but we didn't want to think about it. We're like, let's just do it, and then we'll see what happens, right? So it was like that,
Mhm.
and we put out our music online, and maybe some people like it, maybe some people won't like it. That's not for us to decide. Just yeah. So I mean, yeah, that was the experience, and then I remember later on, and we've told this story a bunch of times in interviews as well, where we took one of our songs that we had recorded to one of the radio stations to play. And there's a lot of radio stations in Kabul in those days, and they said, well, it doesn't fit in any of our programming because it's just a different genre, and I don't know, like we don't know where to put it, right? so so they were kind of hesitant. And then later on, it got to a point where they would invite us on shows on the radio or on TV, on local TV, just to come and play because now people are getting exposed to different types of music and from other countries, and there was an audience for it later.
I want to talk about your first performance in Kabul. It was at a university, and you got a very positive response,
Yes.
specifically from younger listeners. I would assume they weren't quite sure maybe the lyrics or what it meant at that moment, but the reception was very positive. Would you call that a game changer?
So that wasn't technically our first performance, right? I mean, that was our first public performance, if you will, you could say. We did perform in a lot of private events before that. And some of these events were like a mix of expats and Afghans, expats who worked in Kabul. Um, and I think for us, it was kind of an experimenting ground, if you will, because then we knew that, okay, in this audience of expats from all over the world, basically, these are like people who work in international aid organizations, a lot of different companies and so on. That they are like from all over the world, from Germany, from Holland, from the U.S., from you name it, from France, all different people who are in Kabul because they work at something, and there's a lot of them. So and they would gather in these places, and there was like some spaces that they would have music, and so we performed in a bunch of those in the beginning, and that was kind of experimenting ground for us because we knew, okay, in this audience there's a mix of Afghans and non-Afghans. We know that some of these people know this music or this style of music, so for them it would be like, okay, they will accept it because they know this music. The university performance uh, was the first time where we kind of like said, okay, so now we're performing in front of all Afghan audience, all young Afghan audience in a university, and we had no idea how they would. We were kind of nervous because we thought like, what if they don't like it? What if they make us stop the show and not continue playing because most of these people haven't even heard this kind of music before, or at least not live. You know, they might have heard it on recordings, but not live. And it was interesting. And we were setting up the sound, and the auditorium that we played was had a lot of reflection, so everything sounded 3 times louder.
Mhm.
So we were like getting even more. Oh man, this is gonna sound really loud, you know. And most Afghan people living in Kabul or even other places, their live experience with music was either at weddings or like some traditional music, right? So, and this was going to be very different. There's live drums and distorted guitars and bass guitar and loud vocals. So it will be. So for us, it was like we didn't know what to expect, but we were kind of we were like we have to do this, you know. We have to play it, and then we'll see what happens. If they kick us out, they kick us out. You know. I mean that was kind of the mindset when we were going on stage. And then right after we played the first, I don't know, 15 seconds of the first song, we realized that they're enjoying it, you know. And it just went from there. And it was funny because we had like the sound mixer down in the middle of the audience and the stage up there, and the friend of ours who was helping us with the sound, um, they were not familiar with this style of music. They were professional sound engineers, but like for other like Afghan traditional or weddings and that kind of music, not for our kind of music. So I had to help with that, and even at one point I had to like put my bass guitar out and go run down in the middle of audience, fix something in the mixer, come back and go with the next song. So, but it went really well, and for us, I think the biggest thing in that event was that okay, we have an Afghan audience, and they love this music, and we have to play for them more, and that's where it started to like kind of build from that. And it was kind of an experiment, but we just went ahead and we were like, we have to do this, and it's an opportunity for us to play our music in front of an audience in public for the first time, and it's all Afghan audience, 100%, um, and it just worked so well that we just continued after that, and then we were trying to find more venues where we could play for an Afghan audience, and we did. So we continued until we moved here. So.
I want to talk about the influence of sound for the band. Would you say you're influenced by other musicians, by stuff from your past? Do you think you're influenced by the social or political climate? What influences the sound of Kabul Dreams?
So it's a combination of things, right? For any musician, when they are making something new, whatever they have listened all their life influences them, influences what they write, influences what they play and how they play. It was the same for us. We all had listened to different types of music growing up, and each of those inspired us in different ways. And that includes Afghan music, by the way. It's not limited to rock music, right? Um, and when we were writing these songs, I mean, Suleiman was writing these songs, he had his own inspirations from the bands that he listened to growing up. Then I would come because I listened to different things. It wasn't like, oh, let's make this sound like so and so. It was never like that. We just work with the song, but the influences come kind of more organically, indirectly in everybody. It's always the case for anybody who's making new music, because depending on what you've listened, what you've what your personal inspirations have been, it kind of indirectly comes out in what you do and what you make. So that was kind of the way it worked for us, and it was we had a lot of bands that we all listened to and liked. We had some bands that some of us didn't even know that existed, and the other one was listening to that. So it was a combination of things.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and like like bands like Nirvana and Metallica and all these, like we all listened to those, and we knew about them and about their music, and they were always inspirations for us. But then there were some other specific bands, like some punk rock stuff that Suleiman listened to a lot, and then some um, more like kind of pop rock music that I got exposed to when I was living in Pakistan. And so it was like a combination of different things for all of us. But it when we're practicing as a band together, we never, obviously it's not a direct kind of, oh, let's make this song sound like so and so. It's never like that. Okay, we came up with the song, and now let's figure out the drum parts, let's figure out the bass part, let's go through it a few times and then make some changes, and stop 100 times in the middle of the song and think, okay, can we do this instead of this, and then in trial and error. And then that's how I think that's how the process of making music with a band is, and that's how we know it. And we did exactly that same process. And yeah, some bands might be very different, where like one person does everything and kind of like everybody else is just a musician playing the parts. There's that also as a process. But for us, it's always been very organic, and we just get together in a room. Obviously, Suleiman comes up with the songs and the ideas, um, and then we go from there, and we just take it and kind of play it a few times, and then figure it out and make changes. And sometimes even we come after a week or so, and then make more changes, and it just the song develops into something that okay, this is final and ready for recording.
So would you say it starts as an idea, or is it very organic, just a jam session? I mean, I would imagine maybe a song or even an album would take quite some time if there's a lot of back and forth going on.
Yes, so usually it starts with an idea, and the idea is in the form of a song written by Suleiman. Uh, he's the songwriter in the band, so he and the idea is like, obviously when he writes it just on a single guitar and vocal, right? So there's no other instruments, and then from that idea we kind of get together and figure out like, okay, how do we start the song? For example, what is going to be the introduction, and then where does the vocal part come in? When is the drum kind of come in, and what is the drum part going to sound like? So then we go back and forth and kind of figure out, okay, what is a good drum sound for this, and then we built on that basically.
Mhm.
So um, and it's part of it is like arrangement for the band, but also part of it is sometimes we even make changes to the song, because when he's written it just with the guitar, it's different than when you are um, when you're playing it with the whole band, right? So then sometimes you're required to kind of like, or you just feel like, okay, maybe if we repeat this line twice, it might feel better than just doing it once, those kind
Mhm.
of things. And that just happens when you're in a room with the band and kind of going over the songs and kind of over and over until you are at a point where you're like, okay, I think this is the final version. And then
Do you guys have disagreements ever? Is one person more leaning towards maybe a certain tune, or someone has a vision that they are just so stubborn they want to stick with?
always. Yeah, I mean that's part of it, right?
Yeah.
Like I think the winner is always music at the end, right? Because you are kind of, yes, there are disagreements, like I want this to sound like I want this certain bass line, and then Suleiman might say no, I want it more simpler like this, and the same thing goes with the drums, and then we go back and forth. It's part of the working with different musicians, I think, and even other than the band, if I'm working with another musician on something else, sometimes there are disagreements on things, like because everyone has a different way of thinking about it. But I think we've found a space since day one that, despite our disagreements on certain things when it comes to music, the aim is always for the final piece to come out the way we all want it to come out, right? The aim is nothing like personal,
Mhm.
nothing, um, nothing personal. Like it's just working together, basically.
Mhm.
And yes, we might have different tastes. We might have different approaches sometimes, um, and sometimes we kind of try different things. That's the organic part of it, is that you experiment, you try. Because I could say, let's use those chords instead of these chords. I said that, right? But then we don't know how that's gonna sound until we play it. So we have to like play it, actually play it in person. And funny things happen too. Like for example, there were some times when we were playing and one of us is making like a mistake, like I played something wrong, and then we're like, oh, that actually sounded good. So then you keep that. The mistake becomes part of the song. So it's like always very organic in that way, if you will. I think that's all I can say. It's just the main goal is for the final piece to be perfect and the way we want it to be.
Mhm.
And yeah, and we go back and forth. There are disagreements, there are agreements sometimes. You just go with it. It's part of the process.
I want to talk about the band relocating outside of Afghanistan. You guys all had to eventually leave.
Yeah,
I want to know what led to that decision.
yeah. There were like a bunch of things, but mainly, I think for us it was mainly the security concerns at the time. We were, um, I mean, despite the fact that we got a lot of attention and uh, like everybody would know us and recognize us, mm, that that was good, but also like not good in a way, because then we're kind of like exposed, right? And I think the fact that we're playing this type of music in Kabul, there were people that didn't like it. We never knew who these people are. Like it was all very vague. But we got like they cut the electricity on one of our shows. We're playing the Bubble Gardens, and uh, there was some like random people showing up and kind of threatening us a few times, and so on. So there were like things that were happening between our shows that um, mostly got our families kind of worried that, okay, you guys need to be careful with this. And we had like the opportunity to come to the US for a festival, and um, then we decided like, okay, I think it might be good for us to do that, and to move to relocate, and the fact that we were able to do it all together. And I think it was like ideal situation for us because we didn't want to stop playing, right? But we also didn't want to have security issues, and wanted to be safe as well, like anyone would. So it's kind of a um, ideal situation for us to be able to make the move all together. And that worked out. Obviously, it came with its own challenges because you move to a new place, you kind of have to start from scratch, and um, it takes some time. And I think even now we haven't been as active in the past few years as we have wanted to be because of different reasons, and some of it being just you know uh, life here and all the stuff that you have to do, and everyone being busy and stuff. But also at the same time, um, the inspiration and everything, it takes, sometimes it takes time. You can't force things. And we tried, like sometimes we try to like force it, and it just doesn't work out the way you want it.
Mm.
So now we're at a point where we're like, okay, we gotta like get back on it, and um, just keep doing what we've been doing and what we've been kind of thinking about and envisioning. And and of course, like there's also the fact that you want everything that you do to sound better than what you did before, right? So that like the bar is high,
Mhm.
so it's like every time it gets higher and higher. So we're kind of working towards that. But yeah, that's mostly how we moved.
And since leaving Afghanistan, how has your sound changed as a band?
So as I mentioned, every time we do something, and then the next time we kind of try to make it better in terms of sound quality. So it has changed a lot since we moved here, and it continues to change. There is the factor of like, let's talk about, like, let's say recording quality, right? Fortunately, here in the US, you have the ability to rent a very high-end studio for a day and do your recordings there, right? We didn't have that in Kabul. We like I remember, like, the first album we recorded in Kabul, we had to borrow stuff from everybody. Like, I had borrowed microphones from one friend, a mixer from another friend. The studio was at somebody's place, and we had like the recording system there. We had some of our own equipment, and I am recording and I am playing at the same time, because we just do everything by ourselves. And it was very hard, and the quality, obviously, we didn't have like high quality equipment to do it. We just had what we had, and we used that, and we went with what we had. We just have to do the recordings. So that changes a lot, because you go to a very high end studio here, and they have like the best equipment you can imagine, right? From microphones to everything else. Uh, so your recording quality gets much higher than before, and that comes out in the final piece, in the final product, right? So when that music gets mixed, obviously everything sounds much better. But then also, if you think in terms of timeline, over the years, there's more maturity that comes in to the sound of the band, whether it's from the writing perspective of songs, or the song structures, to the arrangements, to even to everyone's playability, because you get more experience. So now you're a better musician. So like my bass playing is much better now than when I started, obviously, right? Because I just picked up the instrument. So that also is a factor, and so everyone else as well, over the years, like, they become better at their instruments, more comfortable. And then there's the factor of inspiration. So like, for our songwriter, for Suleiman, like, it's a different uh, perspective when you're living here, right? So then that also kind of comes in. So the first album we recorded here, you'll hear the difference if you compare the two, uh, from like a sort of sound quality perspective, and also like content, right? And then the fact that we live here also um, eliminates the carefulness that I would say that we had when we were in college, to like
Mm.
not say things and say things, because we had to like also be careful about ourselves, like I mentioned. So here we can say whatever we want, and it's fine, right? So it's more freedom in that way as well. So yeah, those are, I think, things that I can think of that changed, and that
Mhm.
keep changing.
Do you think with the amount of freedom though, and there's no censorship, no control, better equipment, more accessibility, does that, I mean, now there's no limits. Does that make it m- fun, better? Because I would imagine in Kabul, because there's so many restrictions, you put what you can together and you think, okay, this is the best we could do. But now the sky's the limit. I mean, really, you could do whatever you want to do.
The limitations that we thought of, like what to write, like for example, what to write about and what to not write about back in Kabul, it wasn't that big. I mean, we were still like, we kind of did some crazy things. Now that I think about it, like, we went and played on the street in Kabul.
Mhm.
I think it was, I can't remember what year it was. But yeah, we decided to just go on a street and in front of a shop, and ask the shopkeeper, like, can you give us like a electric outlet so we can plug in everything? He's like, yeah, sure, sure. So we did, and it's actually on video, and one of our friends filmed it for us, and it's there on our YouTube. Um, those were the kind. So we were like not as careful as you would think. We were like, we're just doing whatever we like to do. It was a small factor, like, okay, maybe we should probably not um, say certain things, or you know, because we are also like conscious always. We always have been very conscious about like, okay, our most of our target audiences, like naturally, and it's not something we mean to, it just happened that way, is younger people. And we don't want to set a bad example in any way, because we would be like, everyone would point to us and say, oh, it's because, you know. And then also we, unfortunately, our music in Afghanistan has become like so has gotten a very bad reputation. You know, a lot of people think of music as something really, they think down to it. And a lot of families, like, they don't even want their kids to play music because they consider it like, oh, who plays music, like whatever, you know. So we're always conscious of that too, like to make sure that the image we show of ourselves, of something that we put out there, is nothing, um, because there's also the factor of like, oh, rock music being, you know, has a certain reputation in the West. For us it was like, okay, it's a style and sound of music that we play. We don't necessarily live the rock and roll life. That's not, that's never been us, you know. We just love the sound of it. We love the music part of it, not the lifestyle part of it. And the lifestyle, like I remember every single interview we did in Kabul, the first question was like, so you're living the rock life? Nope, that's nothing to do with us. Like, also, even if we wanted to, that's impossible in Kabul, in Afghanistan.
Mhm.
So that has always been something that we're conscious about. But I think for us, and maybe it's just the way we think about it, it's always been like, okay, if it feels right, then that's what we're gonna do. And what feels right could change from today to like the next year. You know, we don't know, and we'll just get together and figure it out. In just happens to be that way for us.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think it gets a little bit challenging in terms of like, okay, now that you can say whatever you want or express yourself in any way, then what is the topic of choice, and what is the kind of, even the sound of choice, right? Because again, sound wise, also you don't have limitations. You can go and find whatever instrument you like and play it. So we've always tried to incorporate Afghan music in our music, and it might not be very obvious, but it's like, if you know, you know. Right?
Mhm.
We use like a bunch of rhythm patterns that are common in our music. We use it's so also I have to explain this a little bit, because it might sound not very clear to a lot of people. So we still have to be a rock band. Like, we play in this format. It's a rock trio, a bass, a guitar, and drums. And we can't change that, because then we won't be that, right? Now, within that format, within that form, there are things that we can do to like add like elements of Afghan music, for example. Like, we've used some rhythmic patterns within our song structures that are usually not played in rock music. But where does that come from? That comes from our traditional music, because we grew up listening to it. So I remember like a lot of people in the beginning were like, but what about Afghan music? Like, we're like, yeah, we love Afghan music. It's like part of our culture. Like, that's, it doesn't mean that we hate it or we're against it. By no means, the opposite. We actually use it. It's part of us. You know, it comes out in our music. So when we play here sometimes in the U.S., like I know that like some people have pointed out like, oh, I like what you did with that rhythm thing, because that's not usual, and it sounded really good. We do that, and it becomes challenging, but then at the same time, it's part of what makes our sound, you know.
There is a ban on music in Afghanistan under the current regime. Do you have hope that the current time will pass and that this is just a phase, or do you think that however long this phase is, it's going to have really um, tremendous impact on the sound of Afghanistan?
Yeah, I definitely think there's hope for change, because knowing our culture and our people, you can't take music out of Afghan people's life. It's impossible. It's like yes, they try, but like even today, people still listen to music in Afghanistan, right? In the first time when they were in power, there were also music banned, but like we know that people still listen to music. They would smuggle cassettes and tape recorders and stuff and listen to it. I have a friend that I tell this story all the time. He lives in Australia now. He's a vocalist. He used to tell me like the first time when they were in power in the 90s that he would put like blankets over himself with a harmonium and practice so that to make it like the sound doesn't go outside. So we have that kind of culture, and our people are like that. You can't get it out of them, right? Because it's part of our culture, and the culture has like stayed that way for generations and generations, and will stay like that. Is there a very negative impact to the ban on music? Yes, absolutely. It's very concerning, and the reason for that is that in any country, when you're talking about like traditional music or just music in general, there's always a new generation of musicians in the making. So that's what we're missing right now, is that new generation has either been forced to move out of the country in other places, and we're so fortunate that some of them were able to make it, or some of them are like in countries like Iran and Pakistan, living under not so good conditions, but still continuing to play and learn. And I know some of them personally, so I I'm really like always inspired by them because they're still continuing to do it. They're so resilient, and they're playing music and they're learning. But then a lot of them are not able to leave the country. It's not easy for everyone to just leave and go live somewhere else. We consider ourselves very privileged in that way because we're able to do that. So that part of it is like what is really concerning, and I hope that this changes sooner or later, because then at least we can count on the fact that okay, there are people who are continuing the tradition, and there's new students who are learning and continuing the like learning the traditional music, and especially the traditional music, because that's always more vulnerable in these situations, right? Um, and about like from like a listener and consumption side, I'm not that concerned because people are still listening to music. It's the era of mobile phones. All you need is a headphone and you can listen to music from anywhere, anytime. Given there's like also bans on sites and stuff on the internet and everything, and um, but from a more practical perspective of um, the new generation of musicians, unfortunately, that is very, very concerning. And I'm always like thinking about that because it's something, it's really bad, it's something that we will probably feel the impact of this if this continues very long in the next decade or so. And I think again, then it comes to people like us who live abroad to keep the tradition alive, the diaspora. And it's a very big responsibility. I talk about this to all my friends who play music, and I know some friends now here who play like traditional instruments like tabla, sitar, and so on. And I always tell them, especially younger ones, that it's think of it also as a yes, you love doing this and it's your passion, but also think of it as your responsibility, right? Because it is a responsibility in that way, that you have to keep that tradition alive, because back home they're not letting you know. So here you have that privilege of still learning and being able to play, and fortunately that's happening. I am very hopeful and happy about that, that there are, younger people who are playing the traditional instruments and learning and continuing to play abroad, I mean.
Mhm.
So that's really good. But obviously it's not enough, we all know that a lot of ustads who play different instruments are not able to do that anymore back in Afghanistan. And so obviously they won't have students, and that's what it's very dangerous. So I give this example to people all the time. There's an instrument called saranda. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's a boat instrument. It's a small boat instrument, and it was always used in our traditional music in different regions, um, especially in Logari music and others as well, like Baluchi music and others. Unfortunately, nobody plays that anymore. There was like one person who was playing. The ustad who played that died. There was someone by the name of Machine who played with Ustad Biltun and others, and he passed away a few years ago. And there was somebody, I think, playing that instrument. One of my friends told me in Kabul. I think he must have moved somewhere now. I don't know. But yeah, we so it's kind of like that. That's done. Nobody's playing it anymore. Fortunately, Rabab is alive. A lot of people are playing, so I'm happy.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, there's like that kind of thing happens where an instrument just dies, or just you don't have anyone who plays it anymore.
Mhm.
So that's what always kind of that's what I'm concerned about for the situation.
Now, before we end, I know that Kabul Dreams is working on new music in the
Yes.
studio. Can you talk a little bit about what that sounds like and what people are gonna be excited to hear?
It's hard to describe the sound. I think for that everyone would have to wait until it comes out. But yeah, we're working on new material. We're also, so as you know, like, so we've had so far we've had English songs and Farsi songs, and this time most of the stuff we're working on and is in Farsi. And yeah, there's all new material. There's maybe one or like a few older songs that we're redoing in our style as well. So it's a combination of that. Um, but yeah, it's hard to describe the sound. It will be still the sound of Kabul Dreams, but with like maybe some elements of other things. Yeah, it's in the process of making. So um, yeah, we are very excited about it. We are very happy in the way that it's coming out. And we're trying our best to finish it as soon as possible. It's a very lengthy process to do an album, especially with a band. And again, as I said before, every time we do something, the next time we have to do it better than the time before. So we also think that way. So it's like we kind of challenge ourselves as well. But yeah, we're very excited about it.
Well, we look forward to hearing more about that. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. I wish Kabul Dreams all the best and for you as well.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us here. And I'm very happy that I was able to share my thoughts. I think the work that you're doing is very important. Um, so thank you for that. And I think these are conversations that need to be had with all of us. And I think it's very important. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Wish you all the best. Take care.